Hey, third graders. All right, we're continuing our work with perimeter with lesson 16-2. Follow along in your math workbook. Go ahead and turn to page 853 and do the solve and share. Please pause the video while you're working on it. Remember, it says show 2 ways to find the perimeter other than measuring. So don't get out a ruler and measure all the way around. Find 2 different ways to find the perimeter of the rectangle shown. Since this isn't a live lesson and we can't look at our own classmates' work under the document camera, let's take a look at 2 fictional students and their work. So Daphne shows that she's written the measurement 3 inches on this side that's opposite the other short side, 3 inches. And then she's labeled the bottom side 5 inches. And then she shows her work. 5 plus 5 plus 3 plus 3 equals 16 inches. So as the caption says, Daphne uses what she knows about attributes of common shapes to find the perimeter of the rectangle. In other words, she knows that rectangles have opposite sides that are the same length. So with that knowledge, she knows that this side is 3 inches, the right side, and the bottom side is 5 inches. Rodney over here, let me move my picture. Okay, Rodney finds the length of just 2 sides of the rectangle, those were labeled, and adds those together. So 5 plus 3 equals 8 inches. And since the other 2 sides of the rectangle weren't labeled, he didn't include those in his equation. So that is incorrect.
How can you find the perimeter of common shapes? Think about this question during the lesson. Mr. Coe needs to find the perimeter of 2 swimming pool designs. One pool shape is a rectangle and not a square. It has 2 sides labeled with their length. The other pool shape is a square. It has 1 side labeled with its length. What is the perimeter of each pool? You can use the lengths given to find the missing lengths. Let's find the perimeter of the pool that has a rectangular shape. Where did the new lengths on the rectangle come from?
So the original question only had 2 of the sides labeled. So how do we know that this side is 6 meters long and this side is 10 meters long?
The shape is a rectangle, so you know that the opposite sides are the same lengths as the lengths given. Remember, opposite sides of a rectangle are the same lengths. The next step is to add the lengths. What is the perimeter of the rectangular pool? Select your answer.
Call it out. If you say it loud enough, I can probably hear you from my house, and then I'll select the tile that you say. No, I'm just kidding. Don't scream in your house. I wish this were more interactive. Hopefully you're using some good mental math strategies. 10 plus 10 is 20. 6 plus 6 equals 12. What's 20 plus 12? Which 20 plus 10 plus 2? 32 meters.
The perimeter of this swimming pool is 32 meters. Now let's find the perimeter of the pool that has a square shape. Do you need the length of more than 1 side of a square in order to find the perimeter? Why or why not?
So I think what they're asking is that, in the original problem, it only had 1 side of the square labeled 9 meters, right? You can still figure out the perimeter of the square, even if only 1 side is labeled Why is that?
No. Since all sides of a square are the same length, you need the length of only one side. Remember, all four sides of a square are the same length. Add the lengths of the four sides.
So you could certainly add them. 9 plus 9 equals 18. Then add another 9 and add another 9. Or you can skip count by 9s. Hopefully you can also recognize that repeated addition can be solved using multiplication. So if you're keeping up with your multiplication basic facts, you can do 9 times 4.
The perimeter of this swimming pool is 36 meters. You can find the perimeter of common shapes by adding the lengths of the sides. Opposite sides of a rectangle are the same lengths. All four sides of a square are the same length.
Okay, let's move on to guided practice.
Before we start working on some of the guided practice problems, take a look at this example at the top of page 855. There's a math vocabulary term, equilateral triangle. Say that with me, equilateral triangle. An equilateral triangle has three sides the same length. So we see this green triangle over here. Each side is labeled 4 inches. Those are the same length. That's an equilateral triangle. And then there's two different ways to solve for the perimeter. They show the equation 4 plus 4 plus 4 equals 12. And they also show 3 times 4 equals 12. So the perimeter of this equilateral triangle is 12 inches. So even if you had only one of the sides of this equilateral triangle labeled 4 inches, you should know that if it says it's an equilateral triangle, then all 3 of the sides will be the same length. Now for guided practice. All right, follow along and you can jot down the answers in your workbook. Number 1 uses math practice number 2, which is about reasoning. How can you use multiplication and addition to find the perimeter of a rectangle with a length of 6 feet and a width of 4 feet? I'm going to use the highlighter function on my laptop here. You can use your pencil and circle or underline keywords. So I see multiplication and addition. We're finding the perimeter. Another keyword is rectangle. And then the numbers 6 for 6 feet, I guess I should say, and 4 feet. All right. So let's think. First, what do we know about the attributes of a rectangle? The lengths of the opposite sides are the same, right? So if one side of the rectangle is 6 feet, the opposite side also has to be 6 feet. And guess what? It turns out my touchscreen feature does work. Oh, I just have to switch my color to black. So I think I'll be able to write a little bit clearer than I did with my mouse touchpad thing. So let's see. I'm using my finger now. 6. Oh yeah, that's better. Plus 6. A little bit better. Then we've got 4 feet on one of the short sides. And then, of course, the opposite side is also 4 feet. So put that all together for addition. You can do 6 plus 4 equals 10, and then 6 plus 4 equals 10. So we should find that the answer is 20 feet. One thing is I'm not able to write very small. Okay, so that is the addition part. I checked that off. It's also asking me how I can use multiplication. How could we use multiplication? Did you think, well, we can do 6 times 2, and we can do, oops, that's a plus symbol, 4 times 2, right? What's 6 times 2? I might need to write over here. 12. What's 4 times 2? 8. All right, now add those. 12 plus 8 equals 20. So once again, 20 feet. All right, we did the multiplication part, and there aren't any other parts to that problem to solve. Okay, let's take a look at number 2. Explain how you can find the perimeter of a square with a side length of 7 centimeters. It says explain how. So in this case, you've got to use maybe a complete sentence so that it makes sense to someone else you're explaining to. First, think about the attributes of a square. Okay, so we might say something like, all the sides of the square are the same length, right? And there are 4 sides on a square. So I can use the 7 centimeters length of one side for all 4 sides. At that point, you could explain the math that you would do. You do 7 plus 7 plus 7 plus 7 equals what? Or 7 times 4. So it's tricky for me to write all of that, like all the sides. Yeah, that's not working out so well, even with the touch screen. Will you write it down? All the sides of the square are the same length. We can use the 7 centimeter length for all 4 sides. And then, of course, show your math. 7 times 4 equals 28. So the perimeter is 28 centimeters. Don't forget the label. Okay. All right, well, I made a mess of this guided practice. Now let's look at number 3. So it's a rectangle. The length is 8 feet and the width is 4 feet. You can use the strategy we used for number 1 and solve number 3. I'm not going to write the answer in here. I think even though this is guided practice, maybe if you join us at 2 o'clock, we can talk about the answer to numbers 3 and 4. So you go ahead and pause the video if you need to and solve number 3. Think about the reasoning we used for solving number 2 and apply that to figure out the perimeter for the square that has one side that's 5 centimeters. So pause it and write that down now, and don't forget the labels. For independent practice today, as always, you can choose to work in your workbook, in which case you would keep going on page 855, finish the problems at the bottom, and turn the page and do page 856. Remember that if you choose to work in your workbook, I need to see evidence of your learning and your ability to solve these problems. So have a parent take a picture of these pages and email them to me, or you can attend the 2 p.m. math check-in and show me that you solved the problems. We can go over the answers like we did with the group yesterday. Of course, there's also the option of doing Pearson Realize online. So you would do the practice buddy for 16-2. Remember that the visual learning video is there if you want to watch it again. There's also the Another Look video, and the quick check is optional. All right, thanks a lot and good luck.